Hi, everyone. Let me just get my Instagram going, and then we'll get this live Q&A started. It is good to be here with you all. I wish they didn't have this lag. Let's see if this is working. Okay, it is finally working, I believe. All right, we are good. Guys, welcome to Crushing Doubts Q&A. That's Thursdays at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific. I usually say every time, but it isn't every time. I was away last week at the PPDA conference, which was an amazing, amazing event. I really am excited to talk with all of you about it, and certainly can answer any questions about it as well. I'll talk about that shortly. Did want to also make the announcement that I'm out next week for the Q&A. I won't typically be out this often. I have an event for one of my daughters, so I've got to attend that, and I'm, of course, happy to do that, but I'm sorry I'll miss you all next week. So I made sure to get it in this week, even though it's a Jewish holiday, but I got to be here because I was away last week, and I'm going to be away next week. So let's first just touch base about what this is. As always, this is a Q&A about mind-body experience, and of course, mind-body symptoms are the things that happen in your mind, whether they are feelings or thoughts, become very real in the body. These can be acute symptoms that come on all of a sudden and even go all of a sudden. They also can be symptoms that last for a longer time, sometimes even for years, when we don't know how to think about things in the right way to change it. So, a huge part of what we talk about here is how to change the thinking. Now, why do I do this? As many of you know, sometimes this is a review for people who have been here before, but for people who are coming new, they really need to know this. I do this because I had 8 years of chronic everyday back pain. And, I was thinking about that in writing my book, which I will have a release date on in the next week or two. Um, I have a chapter in the book that describes how I suffered. And some people, especially people who hadn't suffered, were like, well, I think you go on too long for that. And I thought to myself, no, 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 I don't think so. I'm giving myself what I wish I had gotten. And one of the reasons that I included the details is that a lot of times I can tell people I had back pain for 8 years, but what happens is their own imaginations can sometimes edit that to be like, oh, you had some mild back discomfort for 8 years. No, no, no. It was bad. And I need people to know the details so that they can know they can trust me to help with these things. Let me say hi to a couple people, then we'll get into my system, which is going to be how I'm going to field the questions for today, as always. Okay, Amir Nurhani, thank you for joining us here. Amir is someone I met actually at the PPDA conference. Wonderful to meet you, Amir, and he's actually from Akron, so right near me. So I look forward to meeting up with him. Amir, thanks for joining us here. Please do let me know if you have any questions. Rita, thank you for joining us. You would have loved this event, and they would have loved you. So hopefully next time we can get you there. It looks like it is going to be an annual event. So thanks for saying hi as well, Rita. Catherine Toomer, thank you for stopping in. Darlene, thank you for joining us here. And Felipe Cabrera, thank you for joining us as well. Meanwhile, Dorisa, good to see you. She says, hi, Dan and Crushing Doubt community. I do just want to highlight, we're really building a community here, and it's a very nice thing. Not just the mind-body community, which is its own community, hopefully. And certainly I felt that at the conference, but here we build a community that can really not only help with mind-body symptoms, but also help with not having doubt. I gave a talk at the conference about the importance of not having doubt, because when people come to a mind-body experience like this, they want answers. And they might even get great answers. They often do in the mind-body community, but then they also get doubt, with somebody bringing up a point that makes them worried, or even a mind-body, practitioner or some other doctor that answers something in a way that makes them think, uh-oh, that's trouble. And when that happens, doubt's off and running. Anything that stays up in here the same way is going to stay the same in the body. So that's what we're looking to change in this Q&A. Okay. Susan Sereno, thank you for saying hi as well. Good to see you. Hillel, good to see you. And we are thinking of you in Israel. I know there's a lot going on there, so keep us posted, okay? Lynn Slavensky, also good to see you. She says, hi, Dan, in the group. So lots of community feeling going on here, which is wonderful. Beatrice Khan says, hi, really good to see you. Disciple One, good to see you here. You may be someone that I know, but I don't know you by name or that avatar. So please do let me know if you have any questions or you want to introduce yourself, and we will get to that. I do have some questions rolling in, which I'll get to shortly. But Amir and Felipe, thanks for saying hi directly. Rita said, oh my gosh, thank you. I certainly hope to go in the future. And Rita, you'd be a great addition. So it's we'll talk before next year and hopefully we'll get you in there. Okay. Darlene says, glad to see Hillel. Yes. Darlene, always good to see each other from, our groups, but obviously we're thinking of you, Hillel. Okay. Let me talk a little bit about my system. So we're going to talk about mind-body experiences and how to get answers about your symptoms. I always say to anyone I talk to, you make sense and your symptoms make sense. That's what this Q&A is for. I'm not saying we'll solve every problem right away, but this is a chance to get more answers. Okay, Disciple One, I see you say I'm new here, so I'm happy to welcome you here. Thank you for joining us, and please do let me know if you have any questions, including about my system, which I'm now going to explain. So in the mind-body world, there's lots of ways that we explain symptoms. Now, in all, we're saying the same thing overall, because we are saying that the brain and the mind can control all kinds of things that happen in the body. And if you can get control of what's going on in the mind, you can control those symptoms. My system has certain differences from other people, even though there are some commonalities. But the basic idea is that there are three main reasons that people have mind-body symptoms. So you can have symptoms for structural or physical reasons. That does happen, though it is actually much more rare than people think. Like if you collide into a brick wall, you're going to have some symptoms. But usually that's not what's happening. Usually it came from a sudden motion, or it came from out of nowhere, seemingly. We can make sense of this. So there are three reasons in my system that people have symptoms, and they are emotions, doubt, and power. What you'll hear me talking about when I talk about these is the columns. It's called the column system because when I got better from back pain and I started seeing people and trying to figure out which of these three were the operative problem of the given moment, I had them divide a sheet of paper into three, you guessed it, columns: emotions, doubt, and power. So the emotions column is for the onset and uptick in symptoms. When it first gets there, you want to look at the emotional experience. And the emotions column is essentially a way of guiding yourself to be able to discover these emotional experiences and know how to figure out which symptom is being caused by an underlying emotion. If you can pull that emotion out of your unconscious experience and make it conscious, the symptom doesn't need to distract anymore. In the emotions column, the function of the symptoms is to distract. It's basically also expressing something, but if we don't know how to decode it, it ends up just being a distraction. The doubt column isn't about feeling. It is about thinking. How our thinking goes will determine how the symptoms stay. So the symptoms begin with emotions column experience. Occasionally, they do start with something called a doubt trigger, where something from the environment makes us doubt, and then we're off and running. But usually, it's an emotional onset or uptick, and then doubt continues that with our thinking. And typically speaking, we don't get the information we need to change our thinking. So the thinking continues and the symptom continues. The symptom continues because of a different function than distraction. It's for protection. But we don't need the protection. But doubt doesn't know it. So it goes on protecting. It goes on getting us worried and thinking about things. If our thinking stays the same, the symptom stays the same. Lastly, there's the power column. The power column is about your relationship with you. And this is a different symptom function also. It also has a different presentation. In the emotions column, it's onsets and upticks. In the doubt column, it's the ongoing or even very persistently recurrent symptoms. And in the power column, it's plateaus, meaning you get your symptom better to a certain point, but then it just kind of gets stuck. That's usually indicative of a conflict in the relationship with the self. The power column allows us to explore that. Now, we can disable the distraction function in the emotions column. We can disable the protection function in the doubt column. In the power column, there's a different function. And the function of the symptoms there is to communicate. The power column wants you to know everything you need to know about who you are and what's not aligned so that you can make adjustments. So the emotions and doubt columns are really there as kind of psychological defenses to keep things away from your conscious mind, whereas the power column is trying to drive them to the surface. And if we can figure that out, we get relief there too. That's the way I'll answer all of these questions. Big Man Mike, thank you for joining us here. Do let me know if you have questions about the system that I just described or even just about mind-body experience, because that's what we're here to answer. I'll say one last thing and then we'll dive in. The reason answering questions is so important, and the reason I do this is because what I found is I got a lot of good information initially from Dr. John Sarno. His book saved my life. But I still had questions even afterwards. And what I found is that if I had lingering questions, even just that kept the thoughts going the same. So we've got to get new answers. Now, let's dive in with some questions. Then I'll talk about some resources on my website at some point in the middle. Okay. All right. Hillel has a question. He says, if you're sitting without support for your lower back, doesn't it make sense that your back would sag and cause pain? I don't know. It just feels so obvious that this would happen. I'm going to see if you have follow up to this. Also, if one sits without back support for a while, what is likely to happen? What does fatigue mean physically? Is it likely that pain will develop as everything becomes overworked and tense? And then he said, it just seems so logical. That would be the outcome. All right. So the first thing I want to say is that doubts typically are very logical, seeming. They're not going to operate well if they don't even seem logical, because we'll be like, no, that makes no sense. They have to seem logical. So Hillel, you're having a doubt. It does seem logical. I get why you're saying that. Here is my counter to it. All right. Now, if you sit without support, doesn't it make sense that your back would sag? Let's deal with that first. Cause pain, definitely not. And I'll get into that in a second. But could it sag? Well, yeah, because what ends up happening is we tend to start to relax. It's hard to keep up a certain level of intensity. You end up lessening it. It's similar to when people come on a podcast sometimes, or they're running a podcast or anything like it, a show. They start off with a lot of energy, but then their natural inclination is to let down that energy. That's the same thing as sagging. So I would say this, Hillel. It actually is likely that if you sit without support for your lower back, you will inevitably probably start to sag at some point if you're not paying attention. Your body just wants to relax. But why would that cause pain? Now, I understand you're saying it seems logical that it would, but you're making an assumption in there. You're making an assumption that anything postural would cause pain. First of all, there's all kinds of studies that show that's not true. And this is across the board. You will not find a study that shows that it does. You will find hundreds of studies that show that it doesn't. So the science is actually with the idea that it doesn't cause pain. Now let me explain the logic of it. Why would sagging cause pain? You're more relaxed. If anything, you should have less tension in your body. So why would sagging cause pain? Meanwhile, Hillel, I'm not laughing at your thinking at all. I'm never laughing at you guys. But I do like to laugh at doubt, because doubt convinces us of some pretty ridiculous things. So again, if you think about it, why would a relaxed posture cause pain? Now, I know where you're going with this, Hillel. If you're sagging and you don't have support, then you're saying, well, the muscles need to be more engaged. But the muscles need to be engaged no matter what. So then there's the question of, does it hurt to have these muscles engaged for a long period of time? Which brings us to the next question that Hillel asked. What does fatigued mean physically? What's likely to happen here? Okay, well, here's the interesting thing. Our bodies, from evolution, they are built to not really get very fatigued. You have to really, really work a muscle for it to get fatigued. Otherwise, you can do it for a long time. And this is true whether you're talking about, your bicep or your back or even your vocal cords. We think that they get really, really tired at a certain point, and maybe they would some if you're really, really working it. If you're talking forcefully for a long time, your voice can get tired. But at the same time, if you think about it, we talk all day, all of us, all the time. And generally, our voices just don't get tired. The same thing is true with muscles. We walk around, we move around. When do your muscles really get tired during the day? The only way they get really tired is if you work them out a lot. Like I play 2.5 hours of full court basketball. Even then, my muscles don't get that tired. I get kind of tired. My mind gets tired. My breathing, actually, I would say, gets better as the night goes on. I get more used to it. If I play and play and play, yeah, probably my calves will get tired. Maybe my back will, maybe my stomach, my abdominal muscles will, maybe my shoulders will, some. But it's pretty minor. And that's 2.5 hours of full court basketball. So now you're telling me that just sitting up without support is going to be a problem. Well, guess what? People can do this all the time. They go to a baseball game and they sit in the bleachers. They do it for 3.5 hours. They don't get tired. We get mentally tired of sitting up. Hello, I'm going to start with that, but I just want to show you, even though it seems so logical, you're caught in a doubt trap. And the doubt trap is all because you have this level 1 doubt, which I'll get into that in a second, that is basically claiming it takes a lot to support this body. It doesn't. Evolution wouldn't work that way. It needs a better setup that doesn't have to work so hard. All right, let's start there, Hillel, okay? Kristen Park, good to see you here. And Bana Bonita, thank you for joining us here as well. Hillel, we're going to start with that. As always, guys, I want to encourage you, follow up with your questions. If I answer them, but it's not to your full satisfaction, I'm not worried about that. What I want you to do is ask the follow-up question, because otherwise you're left thinking whatever you're left thinking. I want to get this settled for you and move this as far as possible. Actually, with that in mind, I'm just going to mention something about what's on my website. I have certain resources on my website. Adding the book to that will be great soon. But for now, there are two main resources that you can use if you want to know about mind-body experience and the columns and how to work with them. One is my teaching seminars. These are pre-recorded sessions. There are 8 sessions. They're 75 minutes long. And I actually am going to do a new seminar that'll be live soon. So if people are interested in doing that, do let me know. I'll be doing that in the coming months so that I'm always learning things. I just learned a ton at the PPDA conference. They learned a lot from me. I learned a lot from them, and that's what it's all for. But my understanding has shifted mostly in some subtle ways, but they'll be helpful. So I'm going to update that. These teaching seminars tell you everything you need to know about mind-body experience. They tell you, why does one person say do this and one person says this? And often it's the opposite. Well, one of the reasons is that moments are never the same and people don't all work the same. My system incorporates all of that. So if you're up in the middle of the night and you want to get started with this, the seminars are a great way to get started. It's 12 total hours and really cost effective for the information you're getting that tells you all about mind-body experience. It brings down doubt. It hammers away at doubt with all kinds of different points. And then it introduces my system and how to work with it. Meanwhile, there are people asking questions that were there live for that particular event. And so you learn from other people's questions as well. Now, once that's set, when I first built the seminars, I was very pleased with myself and happy that I was giving a resource that could inform in this way. But what I found is a lot of times then people needed help implementing the system. And to implement the system, I have my groups. Groups are directly with me. They're Zoom calls. They're private Zoom calls. They're not recorded. And they're somewhat similar to this in that people ask questions and I answer them. But where they're different is that there's a lot more give and take to those questions. So we get so much deeper, so much faster. If I were sitting with Hillel in this question, I would have asked him several questions. He would have given me several answers. And I would have been able to get much further, not only in answering his question, but everybody's watching that and learning. So we get a lot further in groups. And you can come once, twice, or 3 times a week. They're Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Mondays are 5 p.m. Eastern. Wednesdays are 12 p.m. Eastern. And Fridays are 2 p.m. Eastern. I also have a power column group if you want to work directly on that. That's Tuesdays at 2 p.m. So you can email me, dan@crushingdoubt.org, if you ever want to talk about these things and consider doing any of them. All right, let's get back to the questions. All right. Susan Sereno says, can lacking confidence in yourself getting better be part of the cause of having symptoms? Is that doubt that can keep symptoms going? Okay, great question, Susan. And this relates to something I was saying before, which is about the levels of doubt. There are 3 levels of doubt, level 1, 2, and 3 doubt. And what they each represent is a basic doubt. All right. So level 1 doubt is my symptom a mind-body experience, or is this something structurally wrong or physically wrong? That's a question that needs to be resolved. And there's many ways to resolve it, but that's level 1 doubt. Level 2 doubt is, I know it's mind-body, but my symptom might be harder to manage. A good example of this would be migraines or long COVID, where people say, I don't know, that's harder, more complicated. As it turns out, as I've found, none of these symptoms are actually inherently more complicated. We believe they are, and that makes things harder. So it does prove to be harder because of our beliefs, but it's not. CRPS is another one of these, complex regional pain syndrome. I never use the language of syndromes, but that's a diagnosis people get, and then they think it's going to be more difficult to resolve. That's level 2 doubt. Level 3 doubt is what Susan's talking about here. I know it's mind-body. I know all symptoms can be resolved pretty much the same way, but can I do it? Or is this something about me that's going to prevent this, something about my characteristics or the way that I'm doing things? So, Susan, can lacking confidence in yourself getting better be part of the cause of having symptoms? Absolutely. It's one of the top 3 main doubts. Now, the good news is, especially if you're in group, I can help you with that. We can look at why are you lacking confidence in that. And the power column goes a long way in explaining this doubt. Level 3 doubt is usually resolved in the power column. That's where we address problems with ourselves. I'm going to get to more of this question in a second. I want to say hi to a couple people. CB Sands, good for, I may be completely butchering names, and I'm sorry about that. But welcome. I actually recognize your face. I don't know if you were at the PPDA conference, but if you were, let me know. You can remind me if we met. And even if you weren't, I'm glad to be connecting with anybody, and do let me know if you have any questions. Chrissy143 Hart, thank you for joining us here as well. And Chanel, thank you for joining us here as well. Good to see you again. Okay, let me finish answering this question. Is that doubt that can keep symptoms going? Yes. Any doubt can keep symptoms going. Now, I want to encourage you all of something, though. It doesn't mean you have to get to 0 doubt. We're all going to have lots of doubts, thousands of times a day. But if you can keep it nice and low, doubt doesn't tend to do too much. It doesn't tend to infiltrate much, and then symptoms can get broken up. I have a thing about doubt. I talk about how nothing is actually chronic. The only chronic difficulties you can have, injuries or illnesses, are to your vital organs. Your entire musculoskeletal structure, your skin and everything, it all heals. Okay? Bana Bonita said, yeah, 0 doubt seems literally impossible. It is, especially for talented doubters. I'm a talented doubter myself. One of the reasons I'm good at this work is I know how doubt works, because I have it, or at least I used to have it. I don't have it as much anymore. I still have it about some things, but you don't need to get to 0 doubt. You just need to keep it nice and low. Okay? So, Susan, let me know if I answered your question to your satisfaction. Okay, Bana Bonita says, same. Yep. So many people just like us with that. Okay, Darlene says, so following up on Hillel's question, if you do get a strain from sitting without support, is that just TMS? So TMS is tension myositis syndrome. That's what Sarno called this. There are many, many names for it. And I call them mind-body symptoms. Some of those mind-body symptoms are called neuroplastic symptoms. There's lots of names for it. They're basically all the same. They're saying that the brain causes things in the body. So back to this question. If you get a strain from sitting without support, is that just TMS, and why do you think it happens? Yes, you cannot strain your back or any muscles from sitting. It's impossible. Your body, I mean, we have developed over millions of years of evolution to get to a place where we don't get strains from that kind of thing. In fact, we don't even get strains from many of the things we think we get it from. It's actually a mind-body experience. So why does it happen? It happens because of doubt. And Darlene was saying strain from sitting in the mid-back. I am 100% sure that is mind-body when that happens. Why does it happen? It happens because of doubt. We are worried about it. If you're worried about something, then your body can behave accordingly. You start to believe that you're injured, and the body starts to actually change in that way. Now, listen, one of the important questions that many people ask is, how does the brain do this? They need that answer. And I needed that answer. When Dr. Sarno's books were helping me, they helped me a lot, but I did have a question about them, because he said that oxygen deprivation was causing my back pain. And I thought, but how does that explain all the other kind of mind-body conditions, and including like irritable bowel? That can't be from oxygen deprivation. How does a rash happen? That can't be from oxygen deprivation. And I'm not saying this in any way mocking Dr. Sarno. He was so fantastic, and he was onto something, and he was answering it as best he could at the time. But even he came to see that wasn't the case. TMS is a term that he changed from tension myositis syndrome, about tension in the muscles, to tension myoneural syndrome. He came to understand there's a whole set of variables between the brain and the body. Now, here is why these things actually happen. The brain is capable of controlling the body through its central mechanisms, including chemical messengers that it can send throughout the bloodstream to any place in the body. Well, what are those? Dr. Sarno actually got onto this. He thought it was peptides, but peptides turn out to be just one of those. It's actually the entire hormone system, not just the normal sex hormones that people hear about. But hormones are chemical messengers between the brain and the body. They can control the body to do anything it can already do. So what happens when you're sitting up and you're worried, I don't have enough support? Those chemical messengers tell the back, you're in trouble. You could have pain here. And it could even start to fire pain receptors. It could even start inflammation if you get really worried about it. So that's what's happening. Why does it happen? Because of belief. Darlene, please do let me know if that makes sense to you. Bana Benita says, what are your thoughts on Bucks and Falcons? I too distracted with MindBody stuff to be fully thinking about that. I think Thursday games are very sloppy. What my main thought is, I love Baker Mayfield. I wish the Browns hadn't let him go. We can talk more about football at some point if you want. Why does it choose to do what it does? The type of symptoms. Okay. This is another, every question you guys ask is incredibly helpful. But one of the ways that we need to think about this is that symptoms basically get chosen really for one of two reasons. When they are emotions column onsets and upticks, they tend to be very metaphorical. So if you're having a headache, somebody's being a headache or something is a headache. If you have an itch, you're itching to do something. If you have tinnitus, you didn't like something you heard. There's a lot of metaphor in the onset of emotions column symptoms. That's not true, however, with doubt column symptoms that come from an activity. When you're shoveling snow, you don't have a pain in your shoulder because you're shouldering too much burden. It's usually not the case. I mean, it could be both. Maybe you're shouldering so much burden that you're also having to shovel the snow. But what usually happens there is it's plausible. It's believable. And the same thing that Hillel is talking about, or Darlene, about sitting up. The plausible belief that it would happen there. You don't sit up with no back support and suddenly get a knee pain. There's no pressure on your knee, so you don't believe it. So it's going to be about belief, or it's going to be about metaphors within emotion. Bana Benita, let me know if that answers your question. All right, Love Heals. Good to have you here. What do you think about SIBO causing digestive issues? Is it necessary to clear it using gut healing protocols, or is it okay to let it be? What do you think about leaky gut syndrome? Okay, so there's all of these terms that get thrown around, just tons of them. SIBO, by the way, it stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, and there's all kinds of celiac is another one of these, gluten intolerance. I am not mocking any of these things. I'm also not saying that it's never real in the pure medical sense. By the way, everything's real. A mind-body symptom is real. It becomes real in the body. But the question is, all right, do we need to deal with these digestive issues? Here's what I would say. Unless they are really, really severe, and medical doctors are saying you got to be really careful with this. Like if Crohn's disease is in a current flare-up that's so big that it's really threatening, major malfunction in the bowels, okay, maybe you treat that medically at that time. But even people with Crohn's and very serious intestinal issues, typically speaking, you're going to want to manage this with mind-body treatment. So leaky gut syndrome, SIBO, and that sort of thing. Most celiac diagnoses, even most diagnoses of lactose intolerance, don't prove to be truly lactose intolerant. There is such a thing as lactose intolerant, where they cannot process the enzyme, but it's way overdiagnosed, and it's not usually true. What's usually the case is that you're going to, you said it, or is it okay to let it be? You do not need gut healing protocols, because what's going to heal you is getting into a different mindset. When you get into a different mindset, your whole body changes. When we're in a fear mindset, our whole central nervous system is sending out cortisol and adrenaline and all kinds of chemicals that aren't meant to be there that long. And that's what makes the gut, or really any area, get inflamed. We can bring down inflammation by calming ourselves down, but we can't calm ourselves down without the right information. So people sometimes say you got to get the central nervous system to calm down. That's true, but why is it going to calm down? It's only going to calm down if it's got the right information, when it has reason to calm down. So I would say, sure, you can let it be. I don't think you have anything to worry about with that. I will say this: I'm not a medical doctor, so always talk to a medical doctor first to make sure there's nothing concerning. Based on the things you're talking about in this question, I'm not worried at all about that. But medical doctors can be very helpful in ruling out things that are really, really serious medical conditions. So always do that. But after that, especially if you've been to see multiple doctors and they're not giving you answers, or you're not getting a good answer, it's mind-body. And not only could you let it be, but you can take it a step further. You can treat it like as a mind-body issue. And the columns can help you do that. A lot of times, gut symptoms come on for a couple of reasons, but if you look from a column standpoint, they can often come on for emotions column reasons. That's the number one reason. It's an onset or an uptick. There it is all of a sudden. But we usually attribute it to a food or not getting sleep or some other physical thing because that's what we've been taught. Well, typically that's not the case. Typically it is emotionally based. It can also sometimes be doubt based, especially if you've eaten something that you weren't sure it was okay or something like that. My rule of thumb with that is if you're not sure, don't eat it because don't give yourself the trigger. But almost all physical experience in my experience is mind body. Love Heals. Let me know if I answered your question to your satisfaction. We'll go from there. Okay. And Hillel says hi to Darlene. So we've got some group cross-referencing on saying hi. Okay. Susan says, hi, Rita. Rita is an awesome practitioner and she knows so much about the columns. Rita is a mind-body practitioner. Sorry. Yes. Rita is a coach in the field and I've trained her in my columns. So she's particularly adept at that, but she also just is a natural talent of her own and really soaked it up well. And Rita does great work. She's one of my, I have certain trusted referral sources, and especially the people that I've trained, I know that they can at least know about the columns while they're doing their work. So thanks for that shout out to Rita, Susan. And Rita says, oh, thanks, Susan. Scotty Styles, good to see you here. We missed you at the conference, Scotty. I did get to talk to Jeannie. We talked a little bit about you. Hopefully next year you'll be able to be there. It would be great to meet you in person. Okay, Dorisa said, what are your thoughts on macro inflammation? Okay, now this is interesting. Sometimes people ask questions and I think, I've never even heard of that. So macro inflammation is actually one of them. Believe it or not, there are plenty of things I haven't heard of, partly because there's so many diagnoses. So what I did, when I go to Google, I'm not looking for answers from Google per se. I'm looking for information that I can then interpret through my own mind-body lens. In fact, if you're going to go to the internet for information, you should do what I say is put on your doubt armor, which is get ready for a lot of fear and misinformation. But you can, through cross-referencing, figure out what things are. So macro inflammation, I'm reading about it now. Macronutrient-mediated inflammation is a type of inflammation that occurs after eating certain foods and is caused by the macronutrients in those foods. The type of macronutrients in the food determines whether or not inflammation occurs, and the type of food that causes inflammation is specific to certain foods. So I'm never mocking anything that anyone thinks. I'm here in part, though, to counter doubt. And if I do say something that doesn't sit well with you, come back. And ask your question. I'm never mocking you or what you're thinking. I'm trying to bolster you against doubt. So here's what I'll say about that, Dorisa. What I just read on macroinflammation there immediately makes me think this is taking on the same form as all these other things. So I am guessing this is yet another attempt to explain something that they just don't understand because they're not factoring in mind-body experience. At the PPDA conference, one of the things that was very striking to me is all these individuals who understand the same thing as me. We have the same experience, all of us. We keep looking at the exact same format, and we keep hearing about doctors say, well, it's this, or society spreading things about it's this. And all of these sudden specific things, if you think about it, they don't actually make a lot of sense that they would likely be the explanation. There is a philosophical proposition that I use all the time called Occam's razor. Occam's razor is the theory that requires the least amount of assumptions is more likely to be true. Well, this macroinflammation, it's making a lot of assumptions. Wow, we didn't discover it until now? Wow, all these other diagnoses aren't it, but this is? Wow, mind-body experience is not something? That's a lot of assumptions to get to macroinflammation. Meanwhile, if that's the case, why is it so hard to treat? Why is it so varied? All of those things all point in the direction that it's much more likely that the mind-body theory explains this. That's my thoughts, Dorisa. Pushback as needed, okay? All right. Darlene says, it happens when I'm standing and doing chores or paperwork. This is about sitting or standing without support and the strain. Obviously, things I'm not excited to do. Is this my inner child throwing a fit? I feel like I'm fighting a 6-year-old. The adult me wants a clean house and bills paid on time. Oh, I have this happen all the time. Sometimes I say to my body, will you leave me alone? I'm trying to get my work done here. And so we do all have that little kid inside of us that's just rebelling. what we need to do is be empathic to that little kid. That's who we were as little kids. And actually, it's still who we are as adults. It's hard to do these things. Now, I get it. It can be a pain in the ass, sometimes literally. But yes. And what you can do is take 20 seconds and rage internally about it. Then get back to it. And here's another thing you can do. Even if it's causing you pain, just don't worry it's a strain, because I guarantee you it's not. Instead, just be like, fine, you can hurt for a bit. I got to get this done. I'm sorry, kid. I got to get this done. As long as you don't buy into the worry, then the doubt won't take over and nothing will last. It'll instead be an emotions column onset or uptick that doesn't go anywhere. Okay, Darlene, let me know if that helps. Okay, Scotty Sass says, oh, yes, I missed you guys. Yes, Scotty, hopefully we'll be together at some point. All right. Here's one of my favorite names that I can never pronounce, but this is somebody I actually got to meet at the conference, which was fantastic. So he says, hey, Dr. Dan, it was great meeting you at the conference. How do you tell the difference between an injury versus mind-body symptoms and that there are no structural issues? And this is to help me understand better. Can you frame this in terms of your columns? Yes, I will be happy to do so. Okay, so here's the thing. Injuries are, first of all, they're actually far more rare than people think. So, if anything really seems out of whack, I'm going to go see a doctor and just make sure. But I am going to put on my doubt armor, because if they don't understand mind-body experience, they could steer me wrong. Now, one of the ways that I tell the difference between an injury and mind-body symptoms is if there is a big, violent collision. That's more likely to be an actual injury. Now, there still could be mind-body symptoms, even in that situation. If you get mind-body symptoms and there was nothing violent that happened, if you get symptoms and there was nothing violent that happened, it's almost certainly mind-body right away. From a columns perspective, I'm thinking in terms of doubt. Doubt can get in anywhere. So a symptom comes up and you're going to start to worry, is something wrong? Well, one thing you can remind yourself is, but nothing happened. And by the way, movement-related things where you have a sudden movement and it happens, that does not cause an injury. I know that's hard to accept for some, but I want you to start thinking about it. I want you to start challenging that idea, because the reality is you cannot get enough force on any movement you make naturally with your body. It has to be really unnatural, and that usually comes from outside forces. Actually, almost always comes from outside forces. So if there was not a violent event from the outside, causing a lot of extra torque on some body part, I would actually assume it is mind-body. And here's the other thing. You generally can't hurt yourself much doing that. If you decide to really push yourself, assuming it's mind-body, I suppose you could, like if you had a broken bone and you pushed it. But that's the other thing, is that, you don't break a bone without knowing something happened. You don't just say, oh, wow, that started hurting. Oh, turns out it's broken. Nope. No, you got hit by something or you fell in a very violent way. Injuries are very obvious. That being said, mind-body symptoms can also seem obvious. I moved my shoulder quickly and boom, it was suddenly a pain. That can seem really obvious. Movement-related injuries are almost always mind-body. Almost always. I might even say always, but I don't want to overstep my expertise here. All right. Doctors can tell us about some of that. But given the fact that so many of these structural issues that we think are supposedly causing pain, like torn rotator cuffs or herniated discs, they've all been debunked. They don't cause pain. So if these structural things don't cause pain, we don't need to worry about movement. So within the columns, my friend, what I would say is, remember, almost everything is caused by mind-body symptoms. Well over 99.99999% of your experience physically is going to end up being mind-body. So actually, what I say is go to the doctor if you're worried at all. Put on your doubt armor, and if they don't say anything is serious, and I can help you, with any diagnosis they give that ends up not being good, I want you to assume it is mind-body, because it almost always is. Unless some very, very violent physical event happened. By the way, that's true with things like food poisoning. People don't usually get food poisoning. It's very, very, very rare. I've never had it. Actually, that's not true. I did have it once. But thankfully it was not a very violent version of it. You know what, though? Now that I think about it, maybe I didn't have it. I don't know. I thought so at the time, but most things end up being mind body. So I want you to assume it. But uh, typically, that's not what happens. Typically, we assume it's physical. When people get sick, for instance, they usually think it was food poisoning or some kind of illness, when actually it was usually mind body. Okay, let's go from there. So you're fighting doubt within the columns, and then you'd be looking in the emotions column for the onsets of these things. Susan says, if you wonder what is causing your pain or symptoms, is wondering what is causing your pain or symptoms the same as doubt? Yes. If you're not convinced it's mind body, then you're having a doubt. Nothing wrong with that, but it's just something to recognize. So doubt comes in 4 different forms: fear, confusion, lack of certainty, and questions. So if you're wondering what's causing your pain or symptoms, that's at least lack of certainty, or I'd say it's at least questions, but it's also probably lack of certainty. It could even be full-blown confusion, and it could even get all the way up to fear. So we have to get very clear on what's causing our symptoms. All right. Ben says, I'm at the point where I've had a lot of success and the only symptoms left are burning when I have my shoes on. There's still some attentional TMS. That's when you can't stop attending to the symptoms, but I know there's nothing wrong without pain. There must be some belief that even though I have all this evidence, there's still something I have to do to fix or finally finish, even though every time symptoms leave, I never realize it or had control over it. Let's see if you said more about this, Ben. Hold on one second. Okay. So let me go back to this. I want to make a couple comments from a column standpoint. What's happening here, Ben, is you've gotten your doubt way down, which is great. A lot of the symptoms have broken up or gone away. It sounds like you're using the columns to good effect, or have found some other mind-body work that's really working. And you've done a great job. Now, what you're describing, though, Ben, is a plateau. You've gotten it down to a certain point, and doubt's able to hide out in one little area. So there's also a little bit of doubt work to do there. But I also think you've hit I'm not saying a plateau like you're going to be stuck. I'm saying a plateau in a way that's good news, because I think there is a symptom communication going on here. That's power column. So I would want to start thinking about that. And attentional mind-body issues tend to be particularly that way. If you are really afraid of the symptoms, then this is where you would do some work called somatic tracking that I knew about, but learned even more about in Alan Gordon's book, where you've got to get to a place where you're not afraid of the symptoms. So you want to bring that down. But when those persist, there's usually some psychological work in the power column to get to what's going on that's not leaving you fully in alignment with yourself. Ben, my bet is that there's something about that. And one of the reasons that'll be so helpful is it'll then explain why this is happening, and even your doubt about that symptom will then go. We always need an explanation to get these symptoms to go. Ben, let me know if I answered your question to your satisfaction. We've got another question coming in from my friend from the conference. Also, when is the audio version of your book coming out? I don't actually know what the timing of the audio version will be, but hopefully it won't be too long after the book. I'm going to have a release date set for you soon for the paperback copy. I'm going to be recording an audiobook during that time that I'm waiting for it to come out. So hopefully it won't be too long afterwards. We're looking at November or possibly December, but it will be out in 2024 for sure. And I'm very excited about that. Okay, well, we got a lot of questions rolling in. I will see what I can get to. I'm going to try to get to everything I can. Okay, Catherine Toomer says, hi, Dr. Dan. I still get lots of little and big fears when I'm faced with moral decisions, probably for obvious old reasons. She means obvious to her and to me, because we've talked about this for a while. So I'll orient the audience to that as needed. Especially fear that I will not be true to myself. This time, I took a step to counter this fear-based doubt. I was somehow afraid that I'm not fully honoring everything I think, but I'm being overly influenced by loved ones. I faced that fear directly by sharing my opinion in fear and trembling with several knowledgeable friends. Just doing it was good. It helped me realize the fullness of all the little fears, some of which I didn't even know I had. I shared by email. One friend heavily disagreed, but kindly shared her views. At least it was kind. Another does not talk to me anymore. I still feel that I put away a few of my demons. I'm even okay with the old friend who has turned away. I need to be altogether over these fears, but I guess it will have to come one or more steps at a time. Thoughts welcome. Thank you always, dear man. Thank you, Catherine, for your warmth. So I will say this. You're on the right path. When you're doing power column work, you gotta keep aligning with yourself. And there are times where there are going to be people who don't like that alignment. But guess what? If somebody doesn't like you aligning with themselves, they're probably not so good for you. Which, Catherine, I hear you. You're knowing this, and you're taking the steps anyway to align with yourself and do these things. So that is good. You keep that up. All right. When you say you're afraid you will kind of betray yourself or not be true to yourself, what I want to remind you is it's a moment-to-moment experience. You get to choose again and again to be true to yourself, and you're doing that. And I want you to keep thinking about that. Okay. Keep up the good work. All right. Darlene said, yes, sorry, kid. Love that. Yeah. Listen, there are times where we got to live our adult lives. We can be empathic to him, but him or her. But we've got to be able to do what we've got to be able to do. And as long as we don't get into doubt, it's not going to harm us anyway. So that should be helpful. All right. Okay. Scotty Styles says, do you think stuttering could be mind-body or have an overlap of mind-body concerns? Okay. So there's lots of symptoms that can be controversial for various people. Some people, especially stutterers, would tell me to be thoughtful and aware about what their experience is like. They're going to know better than me what the experience is like. However, I think most stutterers do know there's at least a mind-body component. Because you can see it actually happens in people who aren't stutterers. We end up stuttering at certain points if there's anxiety. It just, it's like anything else. Your whole body is connected to your mind. Your face is a gigantic mind-body symptom. It's a mind-body expression. People can tell when you're happy. They can tell when you're sad. They can read your face because it's all right there. Same thing is true with stuttering. So, yes, at the very least, I think you can do a lot of controlling of a lot of stuttering if you're really well aware of the symptoms. I would think of it from a columns perspective as an emotions column onset or uptick that leads to stuttering in a moment, but it's also a doubt column issue because people who stutter all the time, they don't have confidence in their speaking. And listen, I will say, I don't know everything about stuttering. There could be certain things that we don't understand yet that lead people to be more vulnerable to that. Or lead it to be a vulnerability that happens more once it gets going in certain ways. But what I am confident about is this. There is a very strong mind-body component, and you can use mind-body treatment to do a lot to counteract that. Scotty Styles, let me know if that made sense to you. Maggie Sterling Coaching, thank you for being here with us. Sorry it took me a while to say hi to you there. Got a lot of things coming in through the feed. All right. By the way, if I ever miss a question, bump it up. Say it again because I never want anyone to feel dismissed or not heard. Okay. Did I answer this, Ben? Let me see. There must be some belief that even though I have all this evidence, there's still something I have to do to fix or finally finish, even though every time symptoms leave, I never realized it or had control over it. Yeah, I think that's probably a power column thing, but there is a reason that it's nagging at you. You make sense and your symptoms make sense. I say it all the time. So let's work on that. Okay, Hillel says follow-up. I think all my doubt regarding lower back sagging comes from the rare episodes of spasms. In such cases, I had to stay at a right angle. And if my lower back bent, there it is. That makes a lot of sense. But the good news is the spasms happen for emotions column reasons, or maybe for fear, which is the emotional form of doubt. So it was emotionally laden in some way. And it's not actually from the position, but we believe it, and so it plays out that way. Okay, the belief is that the back needs to be straight. If the lower back is curved, it puts pressure on nerves. Not true, but understandable. There's doubt in there, or whatever else is going on there. I don't know, LOL. Okay, so, Hillel, you got to think about it this way. The pressure on nerves, if that were really the case, then why wouldn't everybody who had a curved back have this? Like, things make more sense than this. Again, I'm not mocking anything that you're saying. I know you actually want me to mock the doubt for you, and that's what I'm doing. If curved backs were the cause of pain, everybody would be like that. It's the same thing as like if aging processes actually cause pain, then we would just see people get steadily more and more in pain. We don't see that. I mean, it's just science. It's just science and logic. We got to pay attention to the observations. So I understand the belief, but that belief comes from a doubt belief, and that's going to warp your view. And it has experience, I'll put in quotes. It has experience that when it's not at that angle, it could happen. That's not what happened. That's your body's mind-body. That's your mind's mind-body defense coming in to fool you. Okay? Let me know if that made sense. Okay, Beatrice, although I already know your likely answer, I want to run this by you. Had an extensive EMG on Monday with 2 parts electrodes and need else. Don't know what you meant by that, Beatrice, but let me see if I can put it together. I was forced to resist against the doctor's pressure. Sorry to hear that. And afterwards was so sore that could not walk without limping on my originally injured foot, and still have pain today that seems like setback to my progress. Fear, doubt? Yes. And in fact, this is really important to say. That doctor obviously didn't do you much of a service for multiple reasons, but one of them is they enhanced your sense of danger. Here's somebody who's supposed to be taking care of you, and they're forcing things on you. That's going to raise your fear for sure. Okay, so I don't know what the results of the test were, but I also want to encourage you guys. There are results of tests that show physical changes and things like that. That's not proof that it's not mind-body, because mind-body experience causes physical changes, including changes in EMGs and things like that. So we need to know why things are happening, not what is happening. Doctors are really in a bit of a mess with this, the way that they're trained now. They're always talking about what, and then they're saying because of why, but they don't know why. They only know the what. So keep that in mind. Put your doubt armor on, recognizing they only know the what. We get to analyze the why. Hopefully doctors are going to come around so they can actually help us analyze the why. That would be good. Okay, Beatrice, let me know if that makes sense to you. This is about an uptick in fear. I hesitate to use the word uptick because that's an emotions column experience, but I suppose you're having that too. Doubt has also gone up and fear has gone up. Okay, Disciple 1 says, sir, whenever no need for sir, but I appreciate the respect. Whenever my toe hits something, and if I let my toes just be like that, I feel more pain. But if I stretch my toe, it doesn't that much. And I am a lazy person too. So the pain from a stretched toe gives me sort of activeness in my body. And after that, there's a strong feeling to urinate. And I do go to the washroom to urinate. Why is that? Interesting. Okay. So I'm going to give you my initial answer. But one thing that happens in my groups is I get to know you better and better. So I'll have, and that actually happens in this Q&A. If you keep coming and asking questions, I learn about you. So I have a lot to learn about this symptom, but I'm going to give you my current ideas about this, and you get to kind of test it out and explore it. So first of all, you're having this toe pain. When you have pain of any kind, everybody, initially our fear goes up. It feels like danger. In fact, that's what pain is for. It is supposed to signal there's danger, something needs to change. Okay? But we often overinterpret that. So what's happening here? You're having a sense of danger. The stretching gives you a sense of relief. And then guess what happens? Once you get some sense of relief, all that anxiety you were feeling comes to the surface. That would lead somebody to potentially have to urinate. In fact, I made a joke about this in my PPDA speech. I got up and I said, if anybody doubts mind-body experience, just come right up into my body and feel what it's like to give this speech. And then I said, I've been drinking so much water for the altitude in Boulder, Colorado, but also so nervous about my speech that I probably had to pee about 75 times in 2 days. So frequent urination is one of the typical mind-body experiences. What I see in this is a lot of mind-body activity. Now, you're new here, so we got to gather information, and you got to ask follow-up questions, but that's what I'd say. Okay, Susan says, that was very helpful, Dan. Thank you. My pleasure. Okay, what is this? Chillings and strong feelings to urinate after the outer pain in the body. Yeah, I think it's an anxiety response. Okay. Now, with the columns, I can help you understand your emotions column so that you understand your emotions better. In the power column, I can help you understand your relationship with you better. And all of this moves you in the direction of being able to understand and control those symptoms better. Okay, Beatrice said, "Oh, also found out liver enzymes pretty high in recent blood work by rheumatology. I'm sure not the cause of my burning, painful feet and back. Definitely not. Seems to have no relationship to that. I've considered CRPS with my foot too. Your diagnosis is TMS because CRPS isn't real." Okay, so actually, when we say CRPS isn't real, what I mean by that is what I would mean by that, if I were to say that, is yes, the diagnosis itself isn't real because it's all just mind body experience. But what CRPS is fear has gone so far awry that symptoms start to migrate. People have a perceived or real injury, and then it starts to migrate like to the other foot and the hands, and then sometimes throughout the body, and that's all just mind body panic. That's all it is. So if you've gotten a diagnosis of CRPS, I would reject that diagnosis. And I would think of it as, no, this is a mind body issue. And it's gotten what I call neuroplastic. It's gotten into a fear loop, but we can bring that down and everybody can get better from that. In fact, Rita had that. I also have had it at some point, and we both have gotten past it. As far as I know, Rita's completely fine with it. Mine is very, very minor now and going to get even better. Okay, I hope that helps. Let's see. Ben said your diagnosis is Ben said your diagnosis is TMS. Beatrice, CRPS isn't real. Okay. So Ben, thank you for countering hopefully some doubt in Beatrice. A CRPS diagnosis is simply diagnosing it's another way of explaining mind-body experience. Almost all these diagnoses are. In fact, the PPDA, which was called the Psychophysiologic Disorders Association, I'm on the board, and I encourage them, we got to get rid of disorder. It can't be in there. So we're actually changing the name. Now it's going to be the Association for the Treatment of Neuroplastic Symptoms. Now, I worked for MindBody to get in there, but neuroplastic is a fine term. It just sometimes scares people off with its jargony sound. But symptoms is in there, and disorders not. And that's what we need. These are all symptoms, not diagnoses. Not disorders or syndromes. Okay, so Ben said, why all these tests, Beatrice? Did you get a diagnosis of a structural damage? Enzymes are controlled by the mind. Lower the fear and the enzymes go back to normal. I actually completely agree with that. And I hope that's helpful, Beatrice. Typically speaking, enzymes can get really out of whack from mind-body experience. Your whole body does. And in fact, if you're doing tests while feeling really out of whack, you're going to find a lot of stuff out of whack. But that doesn't mean anything. Doctors will tell you if it means something really serious and they need to check for something. Otherwise, they don't know a thing about it. Okay, Ben said, do you think you could get a perforated ulcer from TMS? I had one when I was 15, and it's what started the rest of my symptoms. Yes. Ulcers typically come from higher acidic content in your stomach, which can happen for mind-body reasons, and that can lead to perforations. So actually, ulcers are so they have become so typically diagnosed as mind-body that even medical doctors are often diagnosing them that way. Not as much as they should be, but tension headaches, that's another one. Those are accepted, but for some reason, back pain's not. And that actually is kind of hilarious to me now that I know what I know. Ben says they never found a structural cause for it or anything. I mean, you're a mind-body sufferer. That's a mind-body symptom. That's what that was. All right. Teresa said, I was surprised because Dr. Schubiner mentioned it in a podcast. I got to go back, Teresa, to, interesting. Yeah. So listen, the mind-body doctors in this field, some of the best people I know and best doctors, they really understand what they're talking about almost all the time. But at the same time, there are certain things that I have to explore more and find out about more. So I'd actually love to talk to Howard Schubiner about this and find out, okay, what is he saying about this? Because and I know him well enough to know that he still probably would say the vast majority of the time you're having mind body symptoms. But I don't know. I got to explore more about this. So that is interesting that he mentioned that in a podcast. We'll see. I'll keep exploring that. But I still have complete conviction that that's a mind body experience. Teresa said food poisoning is awful. You know when you have it. Okay, well, then I probably have not had it. Ben says I would say a plateau. Yes, good. We'll work on that. I still notice shame that comes up. So yeah, I say that's probably the power column work that needs to come. Yeah, because shame is really out of alignment with the self. It's certainly understandable. Ben asked, is shame usually a big power column issue? Absolutely, 100%. Okay, I'm going to try to get uh, a couple more people in here today. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to collect the questions to put them in what I call the preloaded questions so that I can get to them next time in case I don't get to one here. Bana Bonita says, how about skin burning that moves around? Yes, that's very, very mind-body experience. Anything that's moving around all the time is mind-body experience. And the interesting thing is, so are the things that get stuck. They're both signs of mind-body experience. If they're moving around all the time, it doesn't speak to a medical condition. And if they get really, really stuck and don't heal normally and go away, that's also doesn't speak to a medical condition. Okay, I hope that's helpful. Let's see. What did I miss? Scotty Style says, what are your thoughts on fear of fear, like obsessing about what you are thinking about through a lens of danger as if you can't stop thinking about what you are thinking about, like being too aware, metacognition? Yes. So that to me is a level 3 doubt. You're afraid there's something wrong with you. You're afraid of you. That needs to be worked on in the power column. When you are in your power column and aligned with yourself, that's when you don't feel in danger with yourself, Scotty. So that 100%, I agree with you. Through the lens of danger, yes, that's danger with the self. And the power column is where we work on that. Okay, Bana Bonita says, what if you believe your doubt is kind of low, but symptoms are chronic? Well, first thing I'll say is this. A lot of people believe their doubt is low, and it proves that, and it turns out that they're not. So what I would like to do is explore that with you. I was working with somebody just recently who didn't think they had any level 1 doubt, thought it was all mind body, but when they really looked at it, whoa, they did. That's not at all atypical. So the first thing I would do is check and say, okay, you think your doubt is low, but actually that's how it's fooling you. It's convincing you that it's not even there. Let's start there. But you can also, sometimes you can have symptoms that are seemingly chronic, especially if they're kind of low level for power column reasons. But my rule of thumb is this. If you're having symptoms that are really persistent and you think you don't have doubt, you do have doubt. That's my thinking on this, but I would want to find out more, but I hope that's helpful. Just give it a second look, okay? Rudemaster27 good says hello, good to see you here. Nox Flamma, thank you for joining. Nox Flamma says, always stoked to catch your lives and be here. Great to have you with me here. I'm going to try to get in a couple more questions. Woo, we got a lot of stuff. Woo. Okay, Bun Barina says hi. I'm gonna do like a speed round here, guys. I'm gonna answer questions quickly here, and what I'm gonna do is I'll copy down some of these, and if people want follow-ups next week, we can do that. Okay. All right. Here's one. Thanks for your answer. In your experience, when would you use somatic tracking versus somatic experiencing? I had heard this term during the conference. To me, they're the same basic idea. There may be some minor variations in how it's carried out, but they're about re-experiencing symptoms in a way that is safe. Okay, S, your thoughts on the relation between repressed guilt and shame and chronic pain symptoms developing and persisting upon beginning treatment. Thanks for your time. Guilt and shame are very, very big components of mind-body symptoms. When Sarno started out, he started talking about how anger was the main thing, but he came to see this, and so have a lot of the people that have followed him. It's any emotional experience we cannot tolerate can become a symptom. Guilt and shame, those sound like pretty intolerable symptoms. Again, I want to answer these questions with doing them more justice, but I'm going to do the speed round here, okay? Let's see. Beatrice, you said needles you meant. That was from a different... I don't know what that was from, but I appreciate the clarification. We're going to keep going with the speed round here. Hillel says, isn't this possible? Emotional onset triggers a lower back spasm, which then causes a hormonal change that strains the lower back muscles. And if the back gets curved, it does put pressure there. Here's what I'd say to that, Hillel. From an Occam's razor standpoint, that's a lot of assumptions. It starts to sound really convoluted. What's much more likely is that MindBody symptoms cause it all. It's so much more clean and straightforward. And this explains why most people wouldn't have it, because it's only in spasm cases. Actually, a lot of people have it. However, it doesn't explain a chronic lower back curved pain, but what it does is make potential sense with the curved lower back pain with regards to the spasm. I just still think it's a convoluted argument. I mean that as good news. It's a lot of stuff to go into there. What's much more likely is spasms are scary, and once you have that, doubt goes up and then the symptoms stay, especially when our expectations are that way. It's a conditioned response. Amrit Mangat, good to see you here. Oh my God, I got late to the party. I hope everyone's good. Good to see you here. All right. All right. Let's see if I can get this done. We're way over time, but I'm going to try to get some things in. Rudy said, did you get my previous message? I must have missed it. Okay. It's seen here's one. Hopefully this is what you're talking about, Rudy. You said Mr. Pain Detective, first of all. I appreciate that. But then you said, it seems like when I get a better night of sleep, I wake up in heightened state of arousal of pain. But when I don't get a good night of sleep, I hardly get any pain. Isn't that strange? So I understand why you could think it was strange. But I will say that it's not necessarily that surprising, because if you are really tired, you're actually, you're busier almost. You can't handle as much. When you're more relaxed, and some people have this happen when they're like, it's when I'm sitting still, that's when the symptoms get really big. This is similar to that. You're rested. It allows your mind to think more. And if your thinking is causing a lot of symptoms, like in the doubt column, then that's going to cause more symptoms. All right, Rudy, let me see if that, first of all, was the previous message you were talking about. But also let me know if I answered your question to your satisfaction, though we'll probably have to do it in 2 weeks. Darlene says, my stuttering is TMS. It started during a crazy stressful time. All right. Let's see. Oh, Catherine Toomer says, as a retired speech language pathologist, I would definitely say that the secondary characteristics of stuttering are usually, maybe always, MindBody, like tapping finger to get the words to come out, because one time you tapped your finger and it did work, but doesn't last. Secondary characteristics can pile up. Hope that helps. Okay. Thank you for that commentary. And Catherine then said, thank you. I think you meant to say dear, and you're welcome. Glad to hear about your stutter, and hopefully a good, she meant Darlene. Sorry. Glad to hear about your stutter, and hopefully a good direction to get beyond. Yes, she, okay. Confirm that. Let's see. Moving, burning skin, chronic, MindBody. Definitely MindBody. All right. Darlene said, Catherine, Dan is helping me in groups. The speech issues are moving positively. So that's the other thing. MindBody symptoms, when they improve because we change how we're thinking, that's proof it is MindBody. Now, that doesn't mean if it doesn't move, that's proof that it isn't. That could just be proof of doubt. We got to be good scientists here. Okay. Now, Rudy then said, did you get my previous message about getting a good night's sleep? Yep. Okay. So I covered that. Bada Benita said, what the hell do you do in the power column? Here's what you do. There's two main tasks. Let me actually say hi to a couple of people. Chronic pain recovery. Good. I think that's Isabel, who I didn't get to meet at the conference, but I saw you from afar and wanted to meet. So let's connect. I think we're connected on Instagram. So let's exchange some messages. Scotty Stiles says, thank you, Dan. Rudy says, thank you, Dan. Okay, what the hell do you do in the power column? The power column has two main tasks. Again, we're in high speed round because we're way over time. But in the power column, there are two main tasks. One is to build your core narrative. That's to understand the main story of your suffering self. And by doing that, you can actually start to put the past in the past. You can start to feel more settled about it. It's a way of developing self-empathy and being able to settle things. That's one thing. Then there's the present and the future. And the present is where you assess for power. Am I in power or not? Did something knock me out of power? And then you adjust. What do I need to do to get my power back? Okay, so you assess and adjust for power. It's a little hard to explain really quickly, Bada Benita, but that's the basic gist. Okay, Rudy says, hopefully your book comes up this month. It's going to be either November or early December, Rudy, but I'm getting really close. I'll keep you posted. And you can join my newsletter to get information on that. It's www.crushingdoubt.com. You can find the link to join the newsletter there. Okay, Andrea De Silva, this may be quick. After 2.5 weeks, I realized yesterday I hadn't had a migraine. Awesome. This morning, I woke up with a headache. Not as awesome, sorry, which got worse throughout the day. Is this possibly because I thought about it yesterday? Yes, that can do it, because what happens is that introduces doubt. Suddenly, doubt's there. Okay, and especially if it's fear. A fear-based doubt is the emotional form of doubt, and that can lead to an emotions column onset. And so that's what you want to look out for. This is definitely a mind-body experience. It doesn't mean anything about your success before. Eventually, you will learn to forget about this, especially this is part of what the columns are for. If you can make such good sense of things, then you start to feel safe. Okay, Maggie Sterling, have you ever worked with clients who have post-traumatic trigeminal neuropathy? I have. I got it after dental work, and now it is spreading to my whole head, mouth, all my teeth, ears, jaw, and the other side of my face. I'm so sorry. Lots of burning pain and basically my whole head. It sounds horrific, Maggie, but yes, I have worked with it before. You can get past this. Actually, you're having what is called a neuroplastic experience, and we can use somatic tracking for that, but the columns can also help with that. Let's talk. Send me an email, dan@crushingdoubt.org. I can help with this for sure. Okay. All right. Hillel says, love the quick run. Good. I'm glad because I had to do it. He said it gets crowded in here and the channel is growing. And this is the longest Q&A ever. And he's right about all of that. Okay. Evisenka, thank you for joining us here. I'm sorry it's towards the end, but I actually think I did manage to touch on every question. If I missed anybody, I do apologize. But keep your questions coming, because ultimately the way that you're going to get better is to make sense of these symptoms. They have to make sense to you. It doesn't matter if they make sense to me. It doesn't matter if they make sense to anyone else. We have to bring down the fear and the sense of danger through understanding. Bruce Morris, thank you for joining us here. It's right at the tail end. But if you want to watch this again, it's going to be up on Instagram again. It'll run on YouTube again. It runs on Facebook again. I won't be here next week, but I will be here in 2 weeks. And then it looks like I'll be here for several Thursdays in a row. So we can, keep the momentum going. In any case, it is a pleasure being here with you all. Keep your questions coming. You can get answers to these things and you can get relief from all of these symptoms. Incredibly important that you know that. Bring your doubts to me, even if they came from somewhere else. I'll crush them. That's what I'm here for. Okay, guys, it's been a pleasure. Looking forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.